Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2, and today I'll be showing you guys an absolutely insane Graveborn build that is going to completely carry you throughout the leveling process and your early endgame progression. I mean, the gameplay here just speaks for itself. As you can see, the damage that your pets can dish out is just absolutely ridiculous, and overall, this build is actually a ton of fun to play with, which I didn't expect personally, and I'm super excited to show it to you guys. If you're interested in a more spell-oriented Graveborn build, I'd recommend checking out my Spellshot build video where I use Graveborn as my second class, and that should be absolutely perfect for you. But with this build, we're going to be taking full advantage of companions, which is fantastic for leveling because there's actually some super strong skill tree points very early on that you can grab, so you'll have really high damage pretty much right off the bat. This video's main goal is to give you guys a more introductory version of the build so that you can level up super fast and get to Chaos 20 without any issues at all. As such, this build is far from perfect and isn't the absolute pinnacle version that it can be, and I'll most likely upload a 100% perfect variation of this build in the future that is meant for absolutely destroying Chaos level 20. But if you guys are interested in seeing it perfectly set up, or any other build videos that I'll be posting since I'll be making a ton, please feel free to subscribe. But the other day I checked my stats and it's like less than 20% of the people that watch my videos or something like that are actually subscribed, so feel free to sub as it does help me out a ton, and feel free to like the video as well. Anyways, let's just get into it. If you're looking for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands gold, services, or items fast and safe, make sure to check out u4gm.com and use my coupon code NICK for 5% off, link in the description. Alright, so starting off, I'm going to do my best to explain to you guys absolutely everything that you need to know for the build to be perfect for endgame, but also so that you can optimize your leveling strategy so that you can level up extremely easily. As such, some things are going to require double explanations, but I'll do my best to keep it succinct. I always forget the hero stats, so I figured I would just include this here. You just want to absolutely max out crit chance and max out crit damage. I'd probably do an even split while you're leveling up, and then the rest of it I put into spell cooldown simply just to test some stuff. But you could do status damage, max HP, skill cooldown. You could do literally, or sorry, I put into skill cooldown. You could do whatever you want here. I have some extra stat because of my myth rank, so don't really worry all that much about it. But crit chance, crit damage, I do that for every character, and I think Village Idiot is the best because you get the flat crit damage. But on this character, I went Dexterity on accident. Alright, so getting into the skill tree itself, this is going to be the absolute most important thing, and let's talk about how it functions. First off, for the secondary class, this is a no-brainer. We're going to be picking Spore Warden. A lot of people might be wondering, why don't you pick Clawbringer? Honestly, I have not really tested Clawbringer, but the way that Clawbringer works is that it's going to focus a lot on doing fire and lightning damage, and that isn't really going to synergize perfectly with this. But also, it's not even that Clawbringer is bad, it's just that Spore Warden has some insanely good traits that is going to just massively buff your overall companion damage, and the mushroom itself actually does really good damage. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for this video, but Spore Warden is particularly very, very good for leveling. It has some insanely good traits super early on, so we're just going to be talking about that. The fundamental part of this build, which I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about already, or you may even know about, is taking full advantage of Faithful Thralls, where based on the amount of companions that you have in total, it's going to increase your overall damage dealt. This is not only going to apply to you and all forms of damage that you do in terms of ability, spell, gun, etc., but it's also going to apply to your companions. So the idea with this build is to get as many companions out as humanly possible to stack up Faithful Thralls, which in theory doesn't actually have a cap, and just increase our damage by an absolute ton. There's a lot of ways to increase how many stacks of Faithful Thralls that we have. The easiest is, obviously by default, we're going to have 2 companions out all the time, which while leveling, this is pretty much what you'll have the majority of the time, is just those 2 companions, which that extra damage is not going to be insane. But immediately once you get a TDR weapon that is going to spawn enemies, I have one here, it doesn't even have the subtext, but if you have one that is going to spawn Hydras, or spawn, I don't believe Pixies is going to work for this, but the spawn Hydras one always works for this. As you can see at the bottom left, my Faithful Thralls count is going up, and I'm just going to be able to increase my damage overall a ton there. That's pretty much the cornerstone of this build, and as you can see, you get it literally immediately on. I have a class item that's going to give me +2 to this, so at 10 stacks, that's 150% extra damage, so by default, that's extremely strong. Now for the rest of your skill points here, we are going to end up going very far down into Graveborn, but this is actually a pretty hybrid build because I don't actually want to get Morheim's Blessing. I'll talk about all of that later. I've tested a ton of variations of the skill tree, so this is what I think is going to be the best, but honestly, a lot of the variation isn't too significant in terms of how much damage output it gives you. While leveling, I would recommend immediately putting 5 points into Kindred Heart. This is just going to give your companions 40% extra damage right off of the bat. And then the next 5 points, you can immediately go into Companion Crit Chance and Gun Crit Chance, which is also going to be insanely good for leveling. Now, if you don't have a TDR weapon yet, your companions may not do a whole bunch of damage, and it may not be worth it to get early on into these skill trees, into Graveborn or Spore Warden. It may not be worth to go further down, in which case you could actually spec Eagle Eye just for some flat extra gun damage. Although it's only going to give you 20%, it could be fairly good, and then you could put like a point into Spore Cloud or Medicinal Mushroom. But for the purposes of this build, we're going to be ignoring Spore Warden for the rest of this, and we're going to go full down into Graveborn, because getting some stuff down here in Graveborn is insanely beneficial. So immediately, we don't really care about these other two things. Giving us max health isn't too big of a deal, and kill skill giving us extra spell cooldown rate isn't all that great either, because our spells aren't insane. But we are going to put this points into spells, because we are going to have some spells that do help us out a little bit here, and we're using enchant to increase our damage based on spell uses, so it's better than nothing. It's better than the max health for sure. Then we're going to go into Harvest, where our kill skills, our companions, are going to do extra damage. So it's pretty much just a flat 18% extra bonus dark magic damage for our pets. So pretty much just view it as 18% extra damage. Now with these extra points, we can go into Dark Pact. So our Demi-Lich is always going to do dark magic damage. So getting flat extra dark magic damage paired with Harvest is pretty much just free extra damage. And then what we want to do is go into Dark Hydra. This is going to give us a chance to summon an extra companion. The main thing that we're taking advantage of this with is getting just extra Faithful Thrall stacks. As you can see, I have a class item, so I get an extra one here. These do a little bit of damage. We don't really care all that much about the damage. Early on, the scaling for this isn't too bad, where they actually do pretty decent damage, but we're mainly taking advantage of this for the Faithful Thralls. Now we want to get further down here. We have some extra points here. Any of these are pretty much fine. If you're leveling, Dread Covenant isn't too bad if you want the survivability. I don't really care all that much for the survivability. I don't even remember what I spec'd here earlier. I think I just went into Dark Pact for the flat extra damage, and then we immediately get Punishment, where whenever our Demi-Lich casts Hellish Blast, there's a chance that it casts again, pretty much just free extra damage. Then we're going to finish out Dark Pact, and then we get Ascension, which is insanely good for survivability. A kill skill, it's going to give us, at max stacks, 60% extra maximum health, so that's just a lot of health, and that's going to synergize very well with our spells, which we'll talk about later. So here we want to go for Lord of Edges. Previously, I went full into Blast Gasp, and then I went into Morheim's Blessing. The thing is that once you're max level, Blast Gasp doesn't seem to do a whole bunch of damage, because a lot of your damage is just going to be from your mushroom and your pets. So Blast Gasp getting that extra damage is not going to be all that significant, but also I really want to get further into the Spore Warden tree to take advantage of something that's going to give us flat extra damage against bosses, which is where I felt like this build was lacking the most. And that's going to help us out a ton. So a lot of people, you've probably seen builds where they're using Blast Gasp and Morheim's Blessing. The reason that I don't like using Morheim's anymore is because it's only going to give you one stack of whatever kill skill you have. So Ascension, it's only going to give you one stack. It does have a good chance of spawning Dark Hydras, which I do think is really good. You can really swap between these and pick between your preference, but I decided that I don't like using this anymore, and I went the full damage route. So the full damage route ends up being, you can put some points into Affinity here, Quiver of Holding if you just want more mag size. If you enjoy the taunt from the Spore Cloud, you could go in there. I like to go with the point into the Spore Cloud, and then I just go some points into Affinity here just for some extra ability damage. But you could also go for Eagle Eye while you're leveling. Action skill cooldown rate. Literally any of these are fine. This is not significant. What's significant is getting Thrill of the Hunt, where gun crits are going to increase your companion damage for a duration. This at max stacks, as you can see, I have a class item here also. At max stacks is going to give me 150% extra damage, which is, I mean, that's just an absolute really ridiculous amount of damage. With this last point here, I'm going to go into Affinity to max it out. And then you have one extra point. You can do whatever you want. You could do gun damage if you're leveling for the extra gun damage. At max level, we don't use our guns all that much. They're not going to be doing too much damage. They're kind of just a means to an end. Stack up Faithful Thralls. The rest here, I'm just going to go magazine size, but it's really up to you. The main reason that we're going this far is for Wrath of Nature. Whenever you deal ability damage, the affected enemy takes increased damage. You're going to take a total of 50% increased damage. And whenever you get a Dark Hydra out, or you use your Dire Sacrifice, this is going to immediately proc this. So you're doing 54% extra damage almost all the time on enemies. The main reason for this is just doing extra damage to enemies that have a lot of health. Blast Gasp I didn't find to be as consistent, and the Hydras themselves don't seem to do a lot of damage. So that's why I liked using this instead. Hopefully all that makes sense. Obviously there's a lot of variation here, and a ton of different ways to set this up are pretty good, but this is what I like to use. For a while I was using Reaper of Bones as my skill, but I decided to swap to Dire Sacrifice once I started using Wrath of Nature. I think both of these are good for different reasons. Honestly, you can kind of use whatever your preference is. I think Reaper of Bones overall is really strong, increasing your bonus dark magic, giving you bonus dark magic damage is particularly good. Going to help out your pets do some more damage. But Dire Sacrifice, I just like using. You can get really low cooldown on it, and we have some enchants that are going to increase our damage after using an ability skill. So having this on a low cooldown is good, but I mainly like it just to take full advantage of Wrath of Nature. But if you saw in the gameplay clips, I was using Reaper of Bones back then. Both of them are still really strong. Like mentioned before, we are using a Furior or TDR weapon, whatever you guys want to call it. This one, for some reason, does not have the subtext here, but you want it to have the subtext that is going to spawn a Hydra. This one just does it by default, but if it spawns a Hydra, that's good. You just want to check that whatever one that you're using that is going to spawn a companion, make sure that it stacks towards Faithful Thralls, because that's the main reason that we're using it. We're barely even actually shooting our weapon. We're pretty much just using it to spawn companions over and over again. So that's the main thing that you want to do. In terms of other ways to spawn companions to take full advantage of Faithful Thralls, another way is using spells that are going to spawn companions. So this one is insanely strong. Whenever you summon a Hydra, it's going to spawn another one whenever an enemy dies that Hydra damage. So you can end up getting a whole bunch of Hydras on the ground. If I had double casts of this one, I would end up using it. There's some that even when you throw it down, it gives you 4 Hydras at the same time. That's by far and away the absolute best thing. I don't even have one of those. I've been trying. I got one like a long time ago while leveling, and I haven't gotten another one since. So since I haven't gotten one, I've been using Buffmeister because it seems to buff my pets. I'm not 100% sure, but overall this is just really good. And I have a lot of stuff that is on spell use. I get extra damage, and this synergizes pretty well with that, especially because it has 2 spell charges, and I'm taking advantage of getting some extra fire damage as well. But if you don't have a Buffmeister, you certainly don't need to use one. You could use literally anything that is going to spawn an extra enemy, a Wyvern, a Hydra Companion. Those are the things that you want to look out for when it comes to your spells. Or you could just use something that, does a lot of damage and you really like using. That's pretty much the core of the build. While you're leveling, all those things that I just mentioned should be absolutely more than enough. You don't even have to use a TDR weapon. If you have one that every once in a while, you're going to get a lot of companions, right, from the Dark Hydra and stuff. And if you have the spell, if you could just get any weapon like a crossbow pistol that does a whole bunch of damage or something, pretty much up to you. I would just recommend experimenting and doing a lot of things while leveling. But once you're max level, your overall gun damage is going to be pretty low, and the majority of your damage is just feeding into your companion. So as such, we're going to be using anything that is going to increase our overall damage dealt or dark magic damage, etc. And that's going to drastically increase our pet's damage. So as on my enchants here, you can see I have on spellcast increased damage dealt, while action skill is active, increased companion damage, while action skill is active, increased fire damage, which is going to buff my Umbral Buffmeister here. And then I have on spellcast increased fire damage, and then on my pickaxe, which I'd recommend for the movement speed and the ability cooldown rate, I have on spellcast increased dark magic damage. For your neck, I have one that is particularly good where the top stats are pretty bad. It has all damage dealt, which is pretty good. But the bottom part is the most important one where when you get a kill, it's going to increase your companion damage by 20%, stacking up to 5 times, so you can get 100% extra companion damage. For the rest of my enchants, I have on action skill start, increased damage up by 20%, and then I also have, while action skill is active, increased dark magic damage by 50%. So there's a lot of different things to take advantage of here when it comes to the enchants. Because all damage is going to, any sort of damage dealt is going to apply to your pets, using Cursed Wit is the best thing here because you can get 100% extra damage dealt. So ideally you kind of want to run around with your shield pretty low. Pair that with some rings that are going to increase your overall companion damage and have 100% effectiveness whenever your shield is low, which is going to be pretty much all the time. This is 30% damage, and I have 2 of these, so this is going to be 60% overall damage. For our class item, there are 2 options that are really good. This one's going to convert 30% of your damage dealt to dark magic damage, which is not very good. The main thing here is that you're getting 2 extra stacks of Faithful Thralls, 2 extra Throw of the Hunt, and 1 extra Hydra Companion, and it's going to give Graveborn power, which is flat more dark magic damage, and Spore Warden power, which is going to buff your Mushroom Companion. This is absolutely insane, but another one that's almost just as good is one that increases your companion damage, or it's going to convert all your companion damage to dark magic damage, which is really good because we're buffing a lot of our dark magic damage through our Graveborn power and through our skill tree. This also has flat companion crit chance and companion damage, so overall this is a really good roll. The skill points that it gives you aren't particularly good, but it's very easy to get a purple one that has, I've gotten multiple of these just playing, that has Throw of the Hunt, extra Faithful Thralls, and extra Hydra Companion. Overall, you'd probably want one that looks kind of like this one, and as you can see, I even have one with companion crit, gun crit, or companion damage. Ideally, you would want all damage dealt, companion damage, and companion crit. If that's a possible roll, that's absolutely insane. overall, that's pretty much it for the build. As you can see, my stuff is fairly optimized with my enchants and everything, and the build is insanely strong as a result. There's probably a lot of other things that I don't even know about how to abuse it. While you're going through the Chaos Chamber leveling process, there seems to be a bug where every time that you finish one and then you enter a new one, you have a mushroom companion that's just in the sky, and then that's going to by default stack your Faithful Thralls. And this seemed to just stack over and over and over again and increase my damage by an absolute ton. I don't really know why this happens this way, but even if you're getting just like, let's say I have 3 mushrooms in the sky, that shouldn't result in me doing like triple the damage or like 5 times the damage or whatever, which kind of seemed like that's what was happening. I'm not sure if maybe it's scaling Kindred Heart more and more, but either way, I would take advantage of that. If you guys know of any way to get Faithful Thrall stacks really, really high by zoning in and out of zones or getting a lot of mushroom companions to kind of bug out, please feel free to leave it down in the comments, because I'm really interested in that, because with that functioning like that, I imagine there's probably ways to just get like 100 mushroom companions in the sky and just do like 1,000,000% extra damage. I just don't exactly know what causes them to do that. But anyway, that's pretty much it for the build. You just pretty much take full advantage of Faithful Thralls. You get all these enchants, you spawn a whole bunch of pets, you get a TDR weapon that spawns Hydras, and your mushroom and your pet just absolutely do an insane amount of damage. I would recommend taking advantage of the ping button, because this is going to make it to where your mushroom companion is going to walk up to enemies and actually hit them, and it'll just help out overall, and it'll do a lot more damage. If you don't ping, there's a certain ability that the mushroom companion literally just won't cast. I'm on a target dummy and the companions don't attack them, which is really annoying for testing things, by the way. But regardless, I would recommend doing that. It's just a small little thing. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you have any recommendations, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, and I will see you guys later. Peace.